Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's presentation, Anthony Power is back. We've got a ton to talk about. Bitdeer just announced they're coming out with their own mining rigs. We've got Bitcoin flirting with all-time highs in the States, already overtaking many of the world's top currencies in terms of its all-time high. And on top of that, we're starting to get more production updates out for the month of February, including Bitfarms, CleanSpark, and of course TeraWulf. So a lot to talk about in today's video. Before we get into all that though, please take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's a huge help to myself, Anthony, the channel. It's 100% free to do, and it gets this content to other people in the Bitcoin space who may find value. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and hit the bell icon, you guys. That way you're gonna get real-time updates when we drop our content. In addition, let us know in the comment section below what you thought of this announcement from Bitdeer, your Bitcoin price prediction going into the halving, and why we're starting to see a decoupling again in terms of the Bitcoin price compared to the share price of a lot of these publicly traded miners. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, Anthony Power is back. We've got a lot to go through today, so buckle up you guys. I just got back from vacation. What a week it's been for Bitcoin mining companies and the price of Bitcoin, as we're now achieving new all-time highs across the world with various different currencies creeping ever closer to that all-time high in the United States. Anthony, super exciting stuff, and top it all off, we now have Bitdeer coming out with their new Seal Miner A1, actually manufacturing their own rigs in-house, which is a first in the industry. So a ton to talk about. Welcome back, Anthony, and looking forward to this one.
Yeah, great having you back, Bryce. And yeah, look forward to this podcast. Yeah.
So first things first, I guess, let's start with Bitdeer, because this one is something that's really new to the industry here. They've come out, they've said, hey, we're going to actually manufacture our own chips, our own machines in-house. They have a long-standing history with Bitmain, which is obviously one of the, if not the biggest manufacturer of mining rigs in the world. So what was your take on this new strategy here, Anthony?
This is just like completing for Bitdeer that vertical integration. Now they've got every base covered. I mean, people look at Bitdeer and think they're just another self-miner, and we've got to highlight the fact that they do so much more than self-mining. Self-mining at the moment is just part of their business. You know, they've got a hosting business, they've got a cloud hash rate business, which uses their proprietary machines to utilize revenues for that business. So that gives the individual retailer the opportunity to actually buy into a mining rig and pay for the energy cost, and then get the rewards when the Bitcoin price goes up. So that's a system that works great for the retailer, but great for Bitdeer itself, because during a bull cycle, the sort of revenues that can be achieved from the company there are really good. And it looks like we're going into a bull cycle. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But today's news was just like another step further. You know, they've announced that they're going to manufacture their own mining machines. And it won't come as a shock to some people, because as you articulated in the introduction, Jihan Wu, who's the CEO of Bitdeer, he's the co-founder of Bitmain. And, that company produces the largest amount of ASIC miners on the market. And if you were to look at, from a size of a company, you could add up the market capitalizations of all the North American miners, and you'd still be short of getting to where Bitmain's valued at the moment. They are a private company, but, the valuation of that company even a few years ago was heading towards like 50 million. And if you think where we are today, and they're selling S21s literally on a daily basis to these big miners, that valuation is quite high. So Bitdeer formed out of Bitmain in that Jihan Wu, that there'd been a disagreement, and he decided to go in his own direction, created Bitdeer, and they're a technology company, first and foremost, and they've got like an R&D team of about 50 employees, and you say, well, that doesn't sound too many. Well, Marathon Digital have got about 50 employees, and they're the largest miner in North America. So that puts some sort of emphasis on staffing there. If they've got 50 just looking at the R&D side of the business out of a total of 200 staff, this wouldn't have been a surprise to some people. But I bet you, to a lot of people listening to this podcast, watching that update come out today, this is game-changing, or potentially game-changing. And why do I say game-changing? Well, if you can produce your own miner in-house, you're not paying a manufacturer to build your machines anymore. You can do it yourself. And if you can do it at a particular scale, there must be opportunities for this company then to start selling their machines to every other miner. And we've already know that Auradine, who've got links with Marathon Digital, they're already coming out and they're looking at a miner as well. And there are other companies out there that are stepping into this arena. So, you know, a year ago, it was really, you know, Bitmain, MicroBT, Canaan. Those were the three main suppliers. By the end of 2024, you're probably going to have 6 suppliers. And that might help the Bitcoin miners, because once you've got, you know, 5, 6, 7 players in this space, it means that prices are going to have to be competitive for companies to start selling their stock. So this was a really good update today. Now, if we look at the actual machine itself, you know, this is, bear in mind, this is their first model. They only got the chips from Taiwan microcomputing business literally a couple of weeks ago. So they've been doing, you know, testing to get this to where we are today. Their efficiency ratio is 18 joules a terahash, which is only just outside the S21. So this is better than an S19J Pro. It's just slightly less efficient, and I mean slightly less efficient than the S21. And this is their first miner. What's the second miner going to look like when it comes out? You know, your guess is as good as mine, but I'm assuming that, you know, they're already sort of like looking at where they could be in 6 months, a year's time, 18 months down the line. And, you know, this is really, really a big story, and I just hope that people are starting to pick up on it. You know, the expectation is that this miner will be ready to go into their own facilities probably later in 2024. And what will that do for Bitdeer itself? It means it keeps the cost down. 80% of the cost of a miner is the actual chip cost. So, you know, they buy the chips from TSMC, and they can build these rigs, and, you know, build them cheap enough where they're, you know, keeping their costs really down, because we saw in the 2021, the last time we had the bull market, some of these miners were paying $70, $80 a terahash. Now, at the moment, they're paying less than $20 a terahash for the T21s, but that price won't stay like that, because generally the mining rigs are correlated to the price of Bitcoin. As Bitcoin price rises, the likes of Bitmain, the likes of MicroBT know that they can put the price up because they can get a return, and they know at the same time with the Bitcoin price that mining companies are also getting a return. So it's a great update. It just means that they've now got, you know, that total integration. Now they've got the Bitcoin mining, they've got the self mining, they've got the hosting mining, they've got the cloud hash rate. They're going to be building their machines. They're also starting to get involved in HPC and AI, and they've got, you know, great connections with NVIDIA. Their preferred customer status there. So, you know, they're covering all the bases, like some of these other mid-tier miners that we've seen. But this is a good news update today. What are your thoughts, Bryce?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of comments on Twitter or X already about this, talking about the efficiency. Like you said, Anthony, 18 joules per terahash out of the gate as your first model is pretty impressive. I guess where the questions are coming up is, can they get this to scale? How many can they manufacture? Like you said, they're on the NVIDIA preferred list. These are Taiwan semiconductor chips, I believe you said, Anthony. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of navigate that. But definitely a step in the right direction in terms of that vertical integration. And Bitdeer is one that I actually put an article out about that partnership with NVIDIA. And like you said, really a technology play where a lot of people think it's only a self miner like some of the other ones we cover, eh?
Yeah, they've got a good relationship with TSMC as well. So, you know, part of me was thinking when I saw this update, you know, we had a bit of a chip problem a couple of years ago where there was, the demand was so high that, you know, mining machines weren't getting produced as quickly as miners wanted them. But, you know, having spoke to a number of people now in the industry now, it's like, you know, these Bitcoin miners aren't needing the demand of chips that, say, Apple or some of the other major phone companies use. I think from Bitdeer's perspective, they have a good relationship with TSMC, and that will stand them in good stead. But you're quite right to raise, let's not run before we can walk. They produced, a prototype now. Now they'll go through more testing. And what normally happens is when you're testing these machines, you'll send them to competitors to test as well. So, when the T21 came out, it went to all the miners. You didn't have to buy it. They were giving you the machine to test it in your conditions. And we saw there was an announcement from Bitfarms last week. They tested I think it was the S21 or the T21, and it was operating significantly higher than what was on the box. And so they were impressed with it. So, there'll be more testing on this machine. Make sure it can stand that test. Get it sent out for testing with other miners. And then it's about looking at scale and how they do that. So that's going to be the challenge, because all those things require capital. And, in this market at the moment, the challenge to all miners is to raise capital. And a few of them are doing it, quite well. The likes of, your Riots and your Marathons and your CleanSparks. And some of the other miners are starting to get into that position as well. And we know that Bitdeer from April onwards will also have an opportunity to start raising capital in the same way as some of the other miners. So let's see how the test of time goes. But I think today that's a bit of a game changer for a mining company to come out with that type of an update, building their own machines, keeping the costs down, because we talk about energy being a high cost. Mining rigs are also a high cost. Let's not be flippant about the cost that's involved in that. So if they can get them costs right down, potentially sell out to the market when the prices of machines are rising, it means it's a win-win for Bitdeer.
Yeah, monumental development, like you say. Now, interestingly enough, you talk about the price of machines mirroring the price of Bitcoin. However, we're flirting now with all-time highs. I know we've hit it in a few countries, and some of my friends were saying, how can Bitcoin be at an all-time high in only certain countries? You got to remember that currencies all trade relative to one another, right? So as world currencies either gain or lose on other currencies, Bitcoin can obviously overtake one, but not all, or some of them, or whatever the case is. But getting very close to all-time highs in the United States. Interestingly enough, Anthony, we're still seeing the S21, the T21 prices coming out very low compared to what we saw in the last bull cycle. So it'll be interesting to see how Bitmain kind of tries to position or take over that market. But I wanted to talk about Bitcoin price specifically, because I was laying on the beach last week. I was in Cancun, Anthony. Every single day I was checking my phone. I was looking at the Bitcoin price continuing to go up and up and up. However, to my surprise or astonishment, a lot of red days, Anthony. So do you think we're actually seeing this theory of, hey, now that there's ETFs, there's optionality for investors, maybe people are pulling away from the miners and opting in favor of spot ETFs, or even MicroStrategy, which is up over 20% today, Anthony. Obviously well known for their Bitcoin holdings and their CEO's stance on Bitcoin. But what is going on here with the miners?
Yeah, you mentioned MicroStrategy. That's a direct, correlation with Bitcoin itself. So, or a direct, proxy investment for Bitcoin. With the mining companies at the moment, it could well be that investors are, moving out. We're getting to the halving, so nobody again knows. We're seeing some great moves by Bitcoin. It's up phenomenal this year already, and over the last sort of 14, 15 months, it's gone up significant amounts. Heading towards 200%. The mining companies had a great run last year, getting back to close to their starting to get close to their highs. It hasn't really happened this year, apart from a couple of stocks. CleanSpark have had a good run. And that's probably around the fact that they've grown their hash rate from 10 to 16 in the last 2 months. So significant ability for them to do that. But yeah, it might be that people are just having a phase, move out the mining stocks, put it into ETFs, put it into MicroStrategy. I know a lot of people are moving to MicroStrategy at the moment. The share price, I think, last time I looked, was over $1,300. What the Bitcoin price will do for the miners, it will give them more revenues. And we've already seen that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we come up to look at a few of the updates that have come out already. So miners will get more revenues per Bitcoin. They're running a business. So end of the day, it's all about profit. If they can bring in $66,000 per Bitcoin,
and they're mining it for about $25,000, $26,000, $27,000, that's a nice profit to have. As we get into the halving, we know that cost to mine will effectively double overnight. So we'll be, some of these miners will end up paying around about the $50,000 mark at the halving. And these miners have got some of the most efficient machines out there. So, the interesting part will be is that the less efficient miners from globally will have to start switching off because, they might be, paying significantly more than the Bitcoin price. Even if it is today's price of 66 at the halving day, it's going to be, it's going to be a challenge for them. But once these companies start releasing their results, maybe not the quarter we're at the moment, because we're always, quarters in arrears. So maybe the second quarter results for 2024, if the Bitcoin price maintains this 66,000, that'll be a good indicator, as to the profits and the significant revenues coming through, and that will attract people back into the space. So I think it's a temporary thing. I don't think they've gone forever. It just means that there is more opportunity out there to have an investment. If you want investment in Bitcoin, there are more opportunities to have a correlated investment in Bitcoin. And the ETFs, as we know, as soon as people are putting their monthly amounts in or their lump sum into an ETF, the ETF fund has to go and buy Bitcoin that day to cover themselves, because no other investment out there can do what Bitcoin does. So you can't put it into gilts or other stocks or other commodities. They have to go and buy Bitcoin. So we've seen these 11 spot ETFs that were approved in January on a daily basis going out there, and it's only now a matter of a few more days or a week or so, and we'll see the likes of BlackRock probably overtake MicroStrategy in terms of amounts of Bitcoin held in the fund. So they're vastly catching up to them. I think there was only about 30,000 Bitcoin last week when I last looked at the numbers. So they're going to get to that 200,000 mark in short time, especially when you think they're buying upwards towards 10,000 Bitcoin a day. So I think it's temporary. I think people come back into the mining stocks. Some of those companies we've talked about had 500, 600, 700% increases last year in 2023. And you think that should, be literally doubling again now because 2024 has been great for Bitcoin. But there's maybe a bit of profit taking, maybe a move into the ETFs. Maybe some people just taking profits and thinking, had a good run, got in last year, taking money out now. But people come back into this space because the Bitcoin price keeps rising. These stocks will have to start correlating with the Bitcoin price because the revenues and the profits will show that. And some of these companies are so big now, the Marathons, the Riots, the CleanSparks, they're going on stock market, on exchanges where their shares have to be bought. So, I wouldn't give up too much on mining stocks at the moment. It's still a great space to be in. These are the days when you don't like it. You see the Bitcoin price up 4 or 5%. You see half the miners in red. But we've had days where the Bitcoin price hasn't really changed and the miners are up 30%. So you've got to take some of the rough with the smooth. And, here's a day just to be patient. Maybe a day to sort of like, if you've got a chance to sort of like dollar cost average down. So, buy some of the stocks if they've dropped in price to bring your average price down. That might be an opportunity. But the Bitcoin price rising, all these miners do well. End of.
Yeah, that's what I keep coming back to, Anthony. The numbers don't lie. At the end of the day, it's a business, right? If the price of oil continues to go up, oil mining companies are going to do well. If the price of gold goes up, gold mining companies are going to do well. It eventually has to correlate, but we've talked about this decoupling for a long time on the channel. And yes, days like this can be frustrating, but you're totally right. I remember many days where CleanSpark, Bitfarms, Iris, they were all up double digits and Bitcoin was hardly moving. So love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section below on this one. Are you looking at it as a source of opportunity to dollar cost average in, as Anthony says, or are you looking at it a bit more maybe frustrating and looking for alternative investments? You be the judge. But Anthony, I would tend to agree with you. I think this is short-term pain, and I think eventually we will see attention and inflows come back to the space.
One point I did think about, Bryce, is it was only a few weeks ago when we did our podcast, which actually was really, really popular on selling mining stocks. I don't know if people have taken that too literally and started selling their stocks, but that was one of one of our favourite podcasts to put out there, and it's certainly got a lot of attention. So we'll keep reiterating to these retail investors when they what things to look for when they should be selling and when it's good to take a profit. So that'll be a popular one to do again in the future.
Yeah, maybe our advice worked a little too well. We're not at my $95,000 US sell target yet, though, Anthony. So who knows? They must have listened to you and not me. But we'll see. Now, speaking of the miners, I know we have an update. We're starting to see a lot of the updates actually out for February. I think you brought along numbers from CleanSpark, Bitfarms, Wolf, TeraWulf, and then obviously SATO just came out with earnings as well. So let's talk about a few of the specific miners maybe to end out this podcast, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just cover the mining updates today, and we'll do SATO tomorrow because we'll do it in a bit more detail. So looking at the three companies, we know that Bitfarms and CleanSpark had their numbers out literally on day one of on March. So and there was no shocks to their performance, other than the fact that CleanSpark now operating at 16 exahash, as I've already alluded to. So that was their target, which was originally for December, but they managed to do it by the end of February. So they did say it would take probably 6 to 8 weeks longer, and they managed to do it within that time frame. So we'll give them the credibility for that there. So 16 exahash, that's overtaken Riot, behind Mara and behind Core Scientific. And we haven't had those numbers out yet. But it's interesting, people in social media land are starting to say that CleanSpark could be challenging Marathon in February in terms of how many Bitcoin have been produced, because they've had some some bad luck again with the with energy at some of the sites. Bitfarms first out the block, 300 Bitcoin mined, still operating over 6 exahash. 6.1 was their operational hash rate. They've got a total hash rate of 6.5. That's going to be going to 7 exahash probably by the end of this next month. And aligned with that, they are bringing machines in to replace current machines. So we know that, Bitfarms generally top the charts in terms of production. But one area that is a concern for them is their efficiency. And at the moment, even in their February update, their efficiency is 35. But we know by bringing these new miners in the month now, in March, that efficiency will drop to 31 by the end of March, hopefully. So it's going in the right direction. And we know if they get to their hash rate target of 21 by the end of the year, it's got an initial target of 17, but they think they can get even more machines out. If they can get to the full 21 by the end of the year, that efficiency comes right down then to be really competitive with the likes of CleanSpark, Marathon, Riot, and Iris Energy, which will mean lower power costs, more efficient miners operating with lower power costs. And when you go through the halving, that's what you want to see. So following that rule to the book. In terms of revenues, all the miners had great revenues for the month of February, and that's because the Bitcoin price rose significantly from where it was at the end of January. So they were able to bank good revenues for there. And just looking at the results for TeraWulf, they mined 364 Bitcoin. They mined 313 Bitcoin in January. So that's a nice increase in Bitcoin. Bear in mind, you've got a shorter month, 29 days. You've also got a difficulty that went up 10% during the month of February. Now, what does that mean to those people that understand difficulty? If difficulty increases, it makes it harder for these machines to find that next number for the Bitcoin reward. And 10% increase effectively means 10% less production. So we're expecting miners to produce less Bitcoin in February, obviously for less days, but also less because of the actual increase in difficulty. So, Bitfarms did produce less than they did the previous month. However, their revenues are very close to what they achieved in January, so they got a bonus. CleanSpark had significantly more revenues in February because they had an extra nearly 4 exahash as an average operational increased hash rate for the month, so they were operating significantly higher than they were through the month of January, and again benefiting from both that increased hash rate and from the increased price of Bitcoin. They've achieved nearly $40 million in the month of February. And that's $500 million of annualized revenue. If you look at it from that month's perspective, that's significant numbers there. TeraWulf, 17.8 million in revenue. That was a 16% increase in the revenue that they achieved in the month of. That was an increase of 33% on the revenues they achieved in the month of January, and that was twofold. One, they had more machines plugged in, and secondly, they benefited from the higher price of Bitcoin itself. Of the three miners, only Bitfarms and CleanSpark actually use a HODL strategy. TeraWulf, like a number of other miners, are using their Bitcoin to sell on a daily basis, pay for their operational costs and their capital expenditure, and then there's less emphasis then on using dilution as a method of growing. So in terms of HODL for Bitfarms, they sold all their production in February, but they've still got that 804 Bitcoin, which is worth 50 million, and that's the figure as at the end of February. I mean, the Bitcoin price is significantly higher today, so we can only show you what the figure was when they announced it. CleanSpark, again, they sold, I think it was like just over 2 Bitcoin, 2.5, 2.4 Bitcoin, 2.8 Bitcoin. So they managed to hodl again and get over 4,000 coins. So they are going in that direction that they said they would a few months ago, where they were going to literally, as we get to the halving, try and save every Bitcoin, because they firmly believe, and Matthew's been on a number of podcasts and a number of spaces meeting recently on his views about Bitcoin. He's very bullish on Bitcoin going through the halving, that the price will keep on rising. They made a conscious decision to save every Bitcoin they've got. And they're doing that now. So they've got a hodl value there of 263 million, which gives them, along with the cash that they've got on the balance sheet, which is about nearly 50 million, about 300 million going into the halving. That puts them in a good space. When we look at production by exahash, we expect Bitfarms usually comes out generally in them sort of like top three, and 49.2. Bear in mind, these companies were achieving 60 per exahash in the month of January. That you can tell there straight away how the difficulty impacts on production itself. So production is one thing. The production the revenues that you get up is a separate metric. So this is just physical Bitcoin itself. So, they were able to achieve 60 Bitfarms in January. Now it's down to 49.2. CleanSpark not too far behind, 46.7, and TeraWulf at 46.1. So 3 reasonably good. We do a revenue per petahash. So this is looking at all the hash rate that's literally plugged in. This is the total hash rate, and then looking at the revenues they've achieved, so it gives you an indication. And for some of the miners, they have additional revenue streams associated with self-mining. So some of them use energy strategies, and where they release some numbers, that goes into that figure as well. Market capitalization, we've seen the likes of CleanSpark. I mean, we reported back in November they'd achieved 1 billion for the first time, and they're at 3.5 billion today. Bitfarms are at just under 1 billion. They've pulled back. Their share price has took a little bit of a hit in the last few weeks. So it's back under the 1 billion mark, and TeraWulf just under 500 million. And the final metric is one of these where it's looking at your hash rate or your future hash rate over your enterprise value at the moment. The reason we use enterprise value for this is because enterprise value takes into account the debt and the cash and the Bitcoin hodl that these companies have. And therefore, when you look at that and divide the future hash rate, it gives you an indication of what sort of value that should be. And the lower the number, the better. It's effectively like what cost value of these would be. It doesn't mean it's a great thing if it's worth, every exahash is worth 200 million. So for Bitfarms, you look at their cost value per exahash for all the exahash that they're going to have when they get to 21, it's 35 million. For CleanSpark, it's 101 million, and for TeraWulf, it's 57 million. And that gives you a very brief update on the sort of 3 updates we've had today. Any questions from you, Bryce?
No shortage of news, I'd say, Anthony, though. To start off the week here, we've got miners coming out with their own rigs. We've got Bitcoin flirting with all-time highs. We have production updates. The only other question I had, Anthony, in regards to TeraWulf, actually, I saw an update for HPC as well. Have we been seeing any more contracts be announced, or is that kind of taking a back seat now that we're seeing Bitcoin prices surging and these companies really focusing on the self-mining going into the halving?
No, I don't think the foot's come off the pedal with regards to high performance computing and the AI industry. We've seen the likes of BitDigital and Iris Energy both land contracts and have significant amounts invested in this space now. We know that Hive are doing work, and Hut 8 have got a data center business as well. And TeraWulf themselves on their update today they're now allocating 2 megawatts of power to pursue their HPC project, and that will support thousands of the latest processing units, the GPUs that we call them. So they're actively pursuing it. Again, with TeraWulf, I mean, they achieved 7.9 exahash in February. That'll get to 8 exahash early, or certainly by the end of March, and they're on track to get 10 exahash by the mid of 2024. So they're all on plan to do that. But this extra, I can see some of these miners why they want to do this. This going into this GPU space here, they're all data center managers, and so they've all got experience in that there. And if they can get the right level of data center that's required for the high performance computing, it's a different level to general Bitcoin mining. But some of them are achieving that. If you look at some of the cutting edge photographs and some of the updates from Hive, some of the updates from Iris Energy, or Iron as they're called now, you'll start to see why they're moving into this space. They can make that jump, and maybe it's not as big a jump as some were predicting at the start of this. So TeraWulf, keeping their eye on HPC, because again, we know that the Bitcoin price in its cycles does have bear periods. And it looks like we're going through a bull cycle at the moment. That might last a year, 18 months, but there'll be a bear period. By going into HPC, you're going into a business that you're comfortable with, because you can manage data centers and it brings in revenues that aren't correlated to the price of Bitcoin. So it's for some of these, it's going to be a win-win. And when we're talking about the numbers, BitDigital are the ones that have announced a big number. They've got a 50 million contract at the moment, annualized contract for 3 years. They've already said that could go to 100 million by the end of the year. This is significant numbers for these miners who sort of need that funding then to grow the Bitcoin hash rate. Because it's going to be challenging for some of these smaller miners to get the capital to grow their hash rate. So by using other business streams, other revenues, it gives them an ability, especially when Bitcoin price drops and the challenges become, how do you then get revenues in? Do you have to sell your stack of Bitcoin, or do you have to go out and borrow money, or do you have to go to the shareholders and say we need to dilute more? Or we have a business stream that's bringing in millions of dollars, and we're talking great margins for these millions of dollars. We've covered this on previous podcasts. We're talking, potentially 90%, margins on some of these HPC contracts. So really profitable, and it's understood why a lot of these mid-tier miners are jumping down this space here. We're not seeing it from some like the big four in terms of hash rate. They seem to be going out there and buying every machine they possibly can. But, the likes of Bitdeer, the likes of TeraWulf, the likes of BitDigital, Iris Energy, Hive, Hut, all these miners in that sort of that mid-tier bracket there, all going down the HPC route. So there must be something into it. If it was just one or two, you could speculate. But when you're talking 7, 8, and even some of the smaller miners, Soluna, SATO, DMG, I can name, they're all looking at HPC. So there's something in there. I was probably maybe a little bit more critical, 6 months ago when especially when we stopped Ethereum mining, and it was like, what are you going to do with all your GPUs? And, some of the miners were using them to mine other coins. We were getting nowhere near the revenues. It was like just treading water. And then all of a sudden, we've got, a couple that come in and said, we're going to do this properly. And they've gone out there and they've got these contracts. And now we're seeing others thinking, well, we can do the same. We've got great facilities. We know how to manage power, how to manage data centers. And they're going down that route as well. So I think it's a positive thing. And it was included in TeraWulf's update today.
Yeah, agreed. There's got to be a prize there if so many people have interest in it. And this is exactly why, Anthony, I'm a buy and hold type of investor. We've got revenues up, we've got exahash hash rate up, we've got Bitcoin price up, and like you say, half the miners are red. So your guess is as good as mine. Anthony, one last question, then I'll throw it to you for any closing thoughts. As we approach the halving, is it pronounced halving or Halvening?
I've seen both used, and so I always say halving, and then I've seen an update today from Hive Digital saying Halvening. I don't know. I mean, I think they both. It's just a different word, make the same meaning, I suppose. But Bitcoin halving seems to have a good rhyme to it.
Tomato, I suppose, eh?
I just feel it's like I was going to say it's similar to the Christopher Lambert film, but that was Quickening, wasn't it? The Quickening in the Lambert, not the Halvening. It was the Quickening.
There you go. A little movie trivia for you guys today,
a little
too.
bit of movie trivia there. We'll do more of that in podcast as we go along. I mean, it's good to throw in a few other bits. We can't be total, Bitcoin mining geeks. There's more to me and you, Bryce, than that. So it's less than 50 days away, the halvening now. So you got me saying halvening now. Now you said that 50 days, less than 50 days to the halving. But as we say, Bitcoin price at the moment 66,700. So I think we'll probably get to the US all-time high price, which is just under 69,000. Probably this week it'll test it, and then we'll see what happens then. But yeah, it's looking good at the moment.
Amazing. Well, we'll be sure to continue to follow that story along with everything else. We've got a number of high-profile CEO interviews coming out in the next few weeks as well. So an exciting time in the space. Anthony, as always, we appreciate your insight. You guys, if you're still watching, hit the like button. It helps get this content to other people who may find value. It's 100% free to do. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. Also, Anthony and I were just talking about hitting that bell icon, you guys. Then you actually get the real-time notifications as we push content out. And in the comment section below, we'd be super curious to hear your thoughts, of course, on the big Bitdeer announcement today, the price of Bitcoin, the updates we're getting from the February results, and the halving versus halvening debate. So guys, thanks so much. We'll see you in the next video.